B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. We know this week's parsha is EMOR, and tonight is Lag Omer, such an auspicious and awesome day. We know that we're counting for 49 days the Omer, and actually the mitzvah of counting the Omer is in this week's parsha EMOR, chapter 23, pasuk 15. Look it up. It says, Usfartem lachem. You should count 50 days from Pesach, the second day of Pesach, to the day of Shavuot. And the two questions we have about the Omer and the students of Rabbi Akiva and about this whole Lag BaOmer is, first of all, why did these... It's a terrible misconception. As a rabbi, I wouldn't be exaggerating that at least 50 times people think that the days of the Omer are sad days, like Tish B'Av, the 9 days and the 3 weeks that we have between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tish B'Av. That's absolutely not true. The Ramban says actually these days were originally the most awesome days of the year. Very, very spiritually powerful days, similar to the days of the 40 days of Selichot, which were very powerful and happy days and productive days. The Ramban calls the days of the Omer like Chol HaMoed. So why would God want to sour these days that God has said that they're like a semi-holiday, very holy days that we could improve ourselves, the 49 days of the Omer? Why have the 24,000 students die in this specific time? Second question is, they didn't respect each other. That's why the 24,000 students of the Rabbi Akiva died during these 33 days. The question is, why kill them? Just for them not respecting each other, why such a terrible punishment for a seemingly futile and minor sin? So the answer is that we know, Usfartem lachem, count for yourselves. What does that mean? Why do we have to count for ourselves 49 days? The word lachem is superfluous and extra. The answer is, my Rebbe Harav Eliezer ben David said, Usfartem lachem. According to Kabbalah, and anybody that's counted the Omer, you'll see, each day, these days are days of growth. These days are days that we have to refine our character. That's why we learn Pirkei Avot, ethics of our fathers, Derech Eretz Kadma Torah. To be a mensch, to have common decency is a prerequisite for Torah. You don't want to be a pig and a disgusting person that keeps the Torah. You have to be refined. So Rav Shlomo Al-Kabetz, that wrote the Chadodi, says the answer to our first question is, Usfartem lachem. These are the days of self-improvement. These are the days that we have to look inside and take away our bad midot, our bad characteristics. We have to take that raw diamond, which is our soul and our personality, and shave off all the impurities to make it a brilliant diamond. That diamond in the rough, we have to take it out of the ground and then polish it to make it shining. The reason why the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva passed away in these specific days is because the midat ad-din, whenever the energy of a time is such that you have a certain mission to make yourself better, but you do the opposite. For two rabbinical students not to respect each other enough, of course, they weren't making fun of each other, they weren't cursing at each other, nothing like this low-life society now. According to their very lofty and exalted position in the eyes of God, they weren't respecting each other enough, Rabbi Avigdor Miller says. That's very clear. But whatever it was, which Rabbi Friedlander is going to explain exactly how they didn't respect each other, since each day of the Omer, we have, like tonight on Lag BaOmer, it's Hod Shebahod. There's 7 Sefirot. There's 7 energies which God created the world in. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Malchut. Each day of the Omer, we refine one angle of our characteristics to make it godly. They did the opposite. They didn't respect each other. That's why they had to pass away during these 33 days, because instead of improving, they just stayed the same. And that's why even though these days are originally happy days, like the Ramban says, like Chol HaMoed, but we have a 33 days of mourning because the Torah became empty. Once the 24,000th student died, the Gemara in Yevamot Samech Gimel says that the world was lightless. The world was close to Tohu Vavohu. The world had lost all its shining stars. And until Rabbi Akiva came on such a day, Lag BaOmer, and taught his 5 awesome students, which one of them is Rabbi Meir, and the Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Now the answer to the second question is, why such a big punishment for not respecting each other? And what's the deeper meaning that they didn't respect each other? So Rabbi Chaim Friedlander, in his wonderful work, Siftei Chaim, the great student of Rav Eliyahu Dessler, he brings that there's a Midrash, chapter 61. It says Rabbi Akiva, when he came to teach Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Rab Meir, and their colleagues, he said, "My children, I beg you, my first 24,000 students died because Shaita enehem sara elu be'elu. They were stingy with one another. Tenu da'atechem shelo ta'asu k'ma'asechem." Rabbi Akiva, on such a day, Lag BaOmer, he told his 5 new students, Rabbi Meir and Shimon Bar Yochai, which were the creme de la creme of those students, he says, don't act like them. Amdu malu et kol haaretz Yisrael Torah. Create a Torah of Torat Chesed, to create a Torah of giving, of menschlich, not of a stinginess. So we know it says in Pirkei Avot that if you even learn one law from any person, one halacha, one idea in Torah, you have to respect that person, like David HaMelech. And the Gemara there says, and the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the last parak says, En kavod ela Torah. Now this brings me to a big frustration that a lot of rabbis and speakers have the world over, and that is that what essentially the students of Rabbi Akiva, how did they disrespect each other? When each one was sharing a new Torah idea, they were stingy. They didn't, if their Torah, if their friend, their colleague said a beautiful new interpretation and insight and angle into Torah, instead of them lighting up and dancing and being happy for their friend, that they didn't appreciate their friend's growth in Torah. They didn't respect each other. Some of them were too snobby and said, "Oh, I'm not even gonna, my Torah, my novel Torah idea, my new chidush, you're not worthy enough to understand." And that's very wrong. Torah is divrei Elokim Chaim. The Torah is the lifeblood of the world. It's the oxygen of the world. When you hear it, like my Rebbe Zatzal, Rav Yaakov Moshe Kalevsky, if you would tell him a Dvar Torah that he didn't know, or even if he knew with a new angle, his eyes would light up, because it was giving, David HaMelech says, Sas anochi al imratecha ki motzeh shalal rav. When I listen to the words of Torah, when I learn the words of Torah, it's like I won a whole treasure trove of diamonds and silver and gold and platinum. So the students of Rabbi Akiva, essentially, the way they disrespected each other is when they shared Torah thoughts with each other that they had invented, they had discovered, they weren't excited about it. And I have to convince, as a rabbi almost for 18 years now, this is wrong. A lot of Jewish audiences, the world over, you have to understand, a rabbi or the person that's coming to the lecture, he at least an hour he prepares to give over the Torah lecture. Some people prepare up to 10 hours or much more than that. We need to complement one each other. That was the sin of Rabbi Akiva's students. When they were sharing Torah with each other, they didn't complement each other. They didn't appreciate each other. To complement, we compliment each other on beautiful ties and meaningless things, silly things. But the Torah that people discover, which is so the lifeblood of the world, which is the most monumental and important thing in the world, people don't appreciate it enough. They don't respect and give chizuk and give compliments and say, and that's what Rav Aaron Kotler says. Ultimately, this disrespect, wherever there's no respect for one another, there's no growth. If somebody is a Torah scholar is skyrocketing, and his colleagues, instead of being happy for that, they, you said something, they don't appreciate and give chizuk, give a good pat on the back. Each one of us needs encouragement. Ish la'achiv yazaru ulaviv yamar chazak. The reason why tremendous and unbelievable, unfathomable growth happens in yeshiva is because when everybody loves each other, respects each other, and appreciates each other's growth, then the sum is greater than the total. Everybody, but in Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva, unfortunately, they were stingy. They couldn't see each other becoming great. They wouldn't compliment when a person was giving a special Torah thought. And this, I must confess, if we're still fasting, if we're still mourning for 33 days, we couldn't, shave, still this lack of respect for one another, it's very simple. If somebody told you a beautiful Dvar Torah or you heard a beautiful lecture, why not send the rabbi an email that you heard online? Or why not go after him and say, wow, that was so inspiring? Because if you don't, that's the mistake of Rabbi Akiva's students. And I just want to finish with an amazing story. I heard it on Stories to Inspire that, Rabbi Eliashiv was the great Posek Hador. He had a grandfather, Rav Shlomo Eliashiv, the L'Shem. And the L'Shem had written a wonderful book that he's known for, the L'Shem Shlavov Achlama. It's a Kabbalistic work. Rabbi Eliashiv's grandfather, there's an amazing story with him and the Ben Ish Chai. One of the Ben Ish Chai's students was a great merchant that would always go from Jerusalem to Baghdad and do a lot of trading in the Middle East. So he comes to Israel and he finds this great book on Kabbalah from Rabbi Eliashiv's grandfather, Rav Shlomo Eliashiv. He brings it to the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai learns it. It's so amazing. He clarifies deep ideas. And the Ben Ish Chai tells his student, I'm going to write a letter of chizuk to Rav Eliashiv, Rav Shlomo Eliashiv, that he wrote such a wonderful and amazing work and that he should continue more and more. So guess what? When Rav Eliashiv, the Ben Ish Chai student, comes back to Jerusalem, where he gives the letter to the L'Shem, and he says, my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Rish Galuta de Bavel, the grand Sephardic rabbi of the entire world, which we are enlightened from his Torah today, really appreciated your book. And Rabbi Eliashiv Zatzal had many other works, his second and third volume to his book. He said, what? I didn't get positive feedback because not that many people are into Kabbalah. I thought I won't publish any more of my works. The first one was enough. So he says, now that you told me such a prominent person, the Ben Ish Chai, the grand rabbi of all Sephardic Judaism, appreciates my work, I'm going to publish. I'm going to make sure to publish everything I have. And his work has 3 volumes. So it's the amazing idea that was the sin of Rabbi Akiva's students, where you're stingy. We need to compliment each other. We need to encourage each other. That's the Torah that has growth. Like Rav Aaron Kotler said, the ultimate idea is these 24 students, since they didn't have enough decency and they weren't encouraging each other, it was worth it for God to wipe them all out, because they were going to be the students, they were going to be the teachers to the students of the entire world. God said, I don't want such a Torah. So to review what we said, anybody and everybody in the world, even somebody as great as Rav Shlomo Eliashiv, which was the Saikon that started the great Eliashiv family, that his grandson became the Posek Hador, everybody needs a pat on the back. Everybody needs words of encouragement. So let's not be stingy with our compliments. It's good to compliment everybody on all their wonderful uniqueness, and especially their uniqueness of Torah, which is the golden crown and the whole reason for all of creation. May Hashem help us to do that. Amen.